Hey guys, Super Nintendo here, and I want to talk to you about how GameStop is affecting the retro video game market. As you know, for the past 2 years, GameStop has once again started selling retro games on their website and in some stores actually. So how is that affecting the retro video game market? I know that when it first was announced, people had freaked out thinking that this is going to be the end of the video game collecting market, that the bubble is going to burst and GameStop is going to be responsible for wrecking it. And that hasn't been the case. The game market has been stronger than ever, and I think GameStop has a major role that they played in it. Alright, so let's talk about pricing first. So it's no secret that GameStop prices their games according to how popular they are. You'll see that if you go into GameStop and you pick up a Xenoblade Chronicles for the Wii, it's still like 50 bucks, and you know, for a retro video game store to sell that makes a lot of sense. But for GameStop, which is technically a retail store or a big chain, it's kind of weird to see a game that's used but still fetching close to retail price. And that's because GameStop is paying attention to what the video game market is doing. You know, they obviously don't want people to come in and buy all of their stock at $5 a piece and then sell them for $50 on eBay. Like, that's not how a proper business would run. So GameStop has been paying attention to that market. If you go on to the video game price charting website and you look at the data, it does show that GameStop actually pays them to mine their data and price their games accordingly. Now, I don't know how often they update it. It sounds like they update it like once a quarter. So because of that, GameStop has effectively controlled the pricing in the video game market for popular games like Pokemon and Mario 3 and Contra, because those games come in all the time. So if you can get it steadily at a certain price, you know, then it's gonna affect what eBay prices are. But that's not gonna affect the rarer titles like Earthbound, Little Samson, Bubble Bobble Part 2, and it's mainly because GameStop doesn't keep them in stock. If you go onto their retro website, yes, they do have placeholders for these games, but they're constantly out of stock, and so you have to constantly monitor that. And so that's not gonna affect the pricing as much as, say, a Pokemon title that's on there all the time going for 20 bucks. You know, just because GameStop has Chrono Trigger on sale for $80 doesn't mean that eBay is going to sell for $80 also, especially if GameStop can't keep it regularly in stock. And since GameStop actually prices their games competitively, you don't have flippers constantly monitoring the price to scoop up the neat price games and turn an immediate profit. You're going to see that some of these games are going to sit in the cart for a while because those games are priced the way that they are. And so true gamers that actually want to buy those video games can at that price, instead of GameStop, you know, listing Little Samson for $5 or something like that, having a flipper run their bot through GameStop system, pick it up, and then immediately post it on eBay for $1,000, which is what it's going for. And of course, sometimes you even get a deal from GameStop. For example, I picked up a NES 101 top loader from their site for $89, and on eBay you see this going regularly for $115 to $120, depending on if it had the Dogbone controller. Mine came with the Dogbone controller, it came with an original NES adapter, and it came with an RF switch. And if you can see here, it's fairly clean too. There's no yellowing or cigarette burns or anything like that. So I was really satisfied. And of course, since it's very popular, GameStop actually raised the price $10. So now it's $100, which is more in line to what it's going on eBay. So there are deals to be had, but it isn't necessarily a game collector's paradise. And the reason why that is because GameStop doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're QAing their products. You have to take into consideration two things, and the first one is whether or not you're going to get a complete copy. Now, for cartridges, that's not too big of a deal. I would care more about the label being torn than it actually coming in its original box. But it does matter for games that come in jewel cases like Sega Genesis, 3DS, and Nintendo GameCube or PlayStation or something like that. Sometimes, like for this one, I bought Luigi's Mansion on there and it came in the disc. It came in a big box. I thought maybe it would come in the case, but it came just this envelope. So it makes you stop and think, did GameStop get the complete copy and throw away all of the inserts to save space, or did they get it just the disc only? That's a question that we have speculated for a while. GameStop is notorious for throwing away cases and everything like that because they need to save space. So take Chrono Trigger, for example. Now, Chrono Trigger, when I went into GameStop, it was in the loose display case and it only was the cartridge, and so I asked the clerk, do you happen to have the case to go with it? And he said, well, I'm not really sure, but I'll check him back for you. And luckily he did. It came with the case, the instruction booklet, and everything else that made it complete. So the price on that was a lot better. But for example, Super Princess Peach, I've been looking for that one complete for a while, and every GameStop that I go into has the copy loose, and when I ask if they have the case, they say no. So I don't know if they're throwing it away, but I mean, that gives you a kind of a clear indication of when you buy stuff on GameStop.com that games that normally have a jewel case or a box or something like that, it's probably going to come loose. The top loader, it also came loose. But one of the bigger things that you have to be gambling about is whether or not your copy is going to be legit. And that is a big deal because GameStop has said before that they're going to QA the games, they're going to clean them up, they're going to refurbish them. If you get a game, you can rest assured that what you're getting is the actual legit game. And that's not the case. Basically, if you go onto the game collecting subreddit, you'll see plenty of people buying games that are fairly expensive from GameStop, and they're blatant fakes. There was a recent one, it was Bubble Bobble Part 2. Currently it goes for about $300 on GameStop's website, and it's incredibly fake. The label is poorly printed. It doesn't even match what the actual label is. And then when you plug in the game, it's Super Tecmo Bowl or something like that. It's not even the right game. So you have to wonder, is GameStop actually QAing these things? And the answer is probably no. Sure, you can return them, but you also, if you pay for shipping, you don't get refunded on that. And you also don't know if the GameStop employee is actually going to toss it into the trash, or if they're just going to send it back and it'll be recirculated back into the general population of games. So we really don't know, and that's really a big gamble, and that turns off a lot of collectors, because I, for one, don't want to spend $100 to $200 on a game that's possibly going to be fake. And as these games get rarer and rarer and reproductions get easier and easier to make, you're going to see a lot more fakes going through GameStop and then getting sold to the consumer. And hopefully only collectors are buying this and know what to look for if it's fake. So GameStop is affecting the retro video game market, and some parts are good and some parts are bad. But another good thing is that there's a lot of GameStops around, but there's not a lot of retro video game stores to collect those specific games from somebody's basement. I've known a lot of people who bring in tons and tons of video games into a retro video game store when I used to work there, and they just simply don't want to look at it. It's junk to them. So any money that they're going to take is money in their pocket that wouldn't have otherwise been there. So they're much more willing to part of it. Of course, like if I was a collector, I necessarily wouldn't bring stuff to GameStop because, you know, I can get a lot more money if I sell it on eBay. And not everybody wants to do that. And since you have a lot more GameStops, more than regular mom and pop retro video game stores, you're going to see a lot more games come into the market, and you're going to see the prices stabilize and maybe even drop because there's so many now available for everybody. So I want to hear your thoughts. Do you buy from GameStop regularly? Have you gotten any counterfeits? Leave it down in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, please subscribe, and thanks for watching.